Welcome to the Fusion Note, a weekly dose of breakthroughs, curiosity, and connection. Because the future is better when we build it together.
Absolutely.
And we've got a really fascinating stack of material for you today. The structure is actually going to be a bit different than our usual deep dives.
Yeah, we're taking a slightly different approach today.
Right. So for our main spotlight, we're looking really closely at the Fusion Note's writing. It's this intensely personal, deeply Jungian exploration of the mind and the shadow.
Mm-hmm.
And we are going to synthesize that piece with a whole stack of cutting-edge sources. We're covering tech health and literally quantum science today.
It's a really profound pairing, honestly, because we're examining the inner architecture of the human psyche right alongside the physical technology we're currently building.
Yeah, it's a big, bold, beautiful journey we're going on today.
It is. And the overarching theme for you to keep in mind as you listen today is how those two worlds intersect. Like, how do our inner frontiers, our fears, our hidden memories that psychology calls our shadows, how do those actually mirror the massive technological frontiers we are crossing right now?
I love that framing. And I want to start right inside that internal world because the Fusion Notes writing opens with an experience that feels, honestly, uncomfortably relatable.
Oh, yeah. Very relatable.
The writer describes waking up from this hyper-realistic dream. You know, the kind where you wake up and your heart is just pounding.
And you're thinking, am I losing my mind?
Exactly. Try to shake it off, stick to the normal morning routine, and stay in what the writer calls the safe frozen light.
Mm-hmm.
But then on the commute to work, it strikes again. They describe it as a primordial scream welling up from inside.
Yeah.
It actually scares them so much they mentally ask it to just go away. And I mean, have you ever felt that round table of shadows just waiting for your attention, and your first instinct is just to pull the covers over your head?
Totally. I mean, avoidance is a very natural defense mechanism. And the writer actually points out how their body grew a bit more frozen over the years, specifically because of that avoidance.
Right, they were bracing against it.
Exactly. They acknowledge knowing there was this well inside them, the staircase going down into the subconscious, but they were terrified of how deep it went. They actually make a really clever reference to the movie Inception.
Oh, yeah, the elevator.
Right, noting they would need a serious elevator to go down that far. And they certainly weren't volunteering to run an inception on themselves. They needed an external force to spin them down.
And that spin eventually came. The writer describes this intense sensation hitting them, and there's this mysterious phonetic message that sort of creeps into their mind. It spells out Kundalini,
Mm-hmm.
and they translated the feeling of it to "Can you lean in?" But looking at that spelling Kundalini, I mean, that sounds exactly like Kundalini.
Which is such a crucial connection to make, because in Eastern philosophy, Kundalini is often conceptualized as this primal, coiled energy resting at the base of the spine.
Right. And when it awakens, it rises up and brings this profound spiritual and psychological transformation. But it is not always gentle.
No, definitely not.
It essentially asks if you have the armor to cut through the forest fires of your past. Initially, the writer's answer was a hard no. They just curled up. But the subconscious doesn't take no for an answer forever.
It really doesn't.
So that night, they drifted off into a deeply symbolic dream sequence.
And the imagery here is just wild. They find themselves in this vast green landscape. There are rivers on both sides. They feel light but terrified because suddenly two silver snakes appear.
Yeah.
One is in front of them and one is behind them. Now, if two snakes box me, and my heart rate is spiking instantly.
Oh, for sure.
But the snakes behind them actually smile and deliver a message. They say, "Red, you'll be fine."
The psyche is incredibly resourceful at using symbols to guide us. The snake is a classic archetype of transformation, shedding its skin.
Right, right.
So those snakes are essentially acting as psychopomps, guiding the writer toward exactly what they need to face. So they keep walking, and they arrive at this corridor of doors. And guarding these doors is Ethan, the character from the sci-fi show Dark Matter.
Which is brilliant.
I just love how the human brain drafts pop culture figures to act as bouncers for the subconscious. It's so funny. But these aren't normal doors. They have years etched into them. One says 3.8 billion years. Another says 476. Then 1945 all the way up to 2026. The writer describes it as a Pandora's box of scenes they are being prepared to witness.
Notice the progression of those dates, though. They represent entirely different layers of history and trauma. The writer includes a great quote from Carl Jung here.
The shadow is the gateway to the self.
Yes. In Jungian terms, the shadow isn't just your personal baggage. It connects directly to the collective unconscious. So the writer attempts to open the oldest door first, the 3.8 billion years door, the absolute origin of life.
But they don't even get the handle turned. One of the snakes immediately bites them on the leg. The message is just loud and clear, you are not prepared for this one.
Right.
So they back off and they pivot to the year 476 door. They open it and are instantly hit with an ocean of suffering. They find themselves experiencing the world as a little girl in the middle of a brutal Roman battle
Wow.
and feeling this crushing, overwhelming responsibility to end the violence.
And see, the snake biting them was a protective mechanism. They weren't equipped to handle the origin of life's shadow yet, but they had to wade into the collective human shadow represented by the fall of Rome in 476.
Right.
They had to feel the weight of historical suffering before they could handle their own personal history. It builds capacity.
Which leads right to the climax of this journey. Feeling completely unmoored by that ancient suffering, they retreat to the corridor and decide to aim for the familiar. They reach for the year 2026 door.
The present moment.
Exactly. They actually feel a bit cocky, laughing, thinking they're ready to take the universe for a spin. Open the door and boom. It triggers a high-speed movie flash of their entire life.
Yeah.
Being born, the first moment of deep fear, falling in love, getting sick, healing. Just a barrage.
Yeah.
But out of all those flashes, one specific memory makes them entirely nauseous.
Because the body often keeps the score when the mind tries to forget. That nausea wasn't random. It was acting as a compass, pointing them toward the exact door they actually needed to open.
And that door was the year 2000. They step inside and immediately feel the crushing weight of how deeply scared they were at that specific time in their life. The door locks behind them. The panic sets in and they scream. But then in that locked room with their past, something shifts. They find a way to approach their younger self. They sit next to her, hold her hand, and simply tell her she is safe.
That's powerful.
It really is. And in doing that, they describe feeling their personal power rising. They realize they can alter the trajectory of that psychological wound. They use the phrase, flip the memento, flip the construct, flip the meaning, flip it into what I want it to become.
And that is the definitive goal of shadow work. You aren't erasing the past. You are changing your relationship to it. You walk into the locked rooms you've spent decades avoiding, and you integrate that terrified part of yourself.
Yeah.
But there is a fascinating detail the writer notes upon waking up. They look at their leg where the snake bit them in the dream, and the physical mark of the bite is actually there.
Which is so strange.
It looks old, perhaps something they've always had, but its presence in that moment really blurs the boundary between the psychological journey and their physical reality. And they conclude with a thought that perfectly sets up the rest of our material today. What we refuse to feel doesn't disappear. It waits.
It waits. Man, reading through that deeply personal piece made me look at the rest of our stack today through a completely different lens.
I bet.
Because while the writer was mapping the inner architecture of their mind, humanity's out here spending billions building out the external architecture of our world.
Right.
So how is our tech reflecting this internal journey? If we look at the tech sources, Anthropic just released their new Claude Cowork. And the ethical focus of this release is entirely on collaboration between AI and humans rather than competition.
It represents a real shift from an adversarial mindset to an integrative one. Think about the writer needing to integrate their shadow to become whole.
Yeah.
On a societal level, we're currently trying to figure out how to integrate artificial intelligence without it becoming this adversarial force that overtakes us. We want to build systems that hold our hand, much like the writer held the hand of their younger self.
And we are seeing that integration takes some truly unexpected physical forms too.
Yeah.
Over in Japan, they are introducing what they call a Budoroid.
A Budoroid.
Yes, it is a literal robot monk.
Yeah.
It's designed to help guide the faithful, and it was specifically developed to address the demographic crisis of an aging human monk population.
That is fascinating.
Right. And then over at Audi AG, they're completely shifting their robotics focus. They aren't just looking at heavy automated assembly lines anymore. They're focusing on delicate, long insertion tasks that previously required human hands.
And the sources mention a point Elon Musk made recently regarding this shift. He noted that the company that ultimately nails the robot hand game will be the one that truly scales humanoid robotics.
The hand game.
Yeah. For decades, we've mastered the brute force of machines. Now the frontier is finesse. We're attempting to embed human nuance, gentleness, and delicate touch into the physical technology we build.
And we are also trying to map the physical world with the same intensity the writer mapped their subconscious. I mean, Google has a new moonshot project aiming for an internet of lasers.
Right.
But the real standout in the tech stack is Prometheus. This is a $30 billion startup backed by Jeff Bezos.
Prometheus is incredibly ambitious because of what it's trying to move past. Large language models at their core just predict the next most likely word based on training data.
Right, they're text predictors.
Exactly. But Prometheus has the stated goal of actually understanding physics, design, and engineering to map the real physical world. Consider the parallel here for you listening. The writer in our spotlight wandered a corridor, opening doors to map their internal memories. Prometheus is attempting to open the doors of fundamental physics to map our external reality. It's the exact same human drive to chart the unknown.
Just applied to a different domain.
Precisely.
And that drive to map and chart is also turning inward toward our biology. We are deeply into the era of personalized health now.
Oh, yeah. The updates here are staggering.
Kurskisak recently released a video exploring a highly debated question, which is, should we give Ozempic to everyone? And alongside that, the sources highlight new research on an oral semaglutide called Sol for type 2 diabetes. It is showing significant promise in reducing heart failure risks by downregulating what researchers call the hunger orchestrator.
The discussion around these medications really requires nuance, though. The short answer to whether everyone should take them is no. The sources outline very strict criteria.
Right, it's not a free-for-all.
Not at all. For these specific interventions to be appropriate, a patient generally needs clear organ function, specifically heart and kidney status and well-managed digestion.
Yeah.
There should be no concerning family history of certain specific conditions either. It is a highly effective medical tool, but not a universal lifestyle supplement.
And the sources also note that a lot of people explore other avenues before turning to these medications. Some look into intensive breath work or meditative practices like those popularized by Joe Dispenza, trying to regulate their systems internally first. But for those who do need the medical intervention, it's about using the medication as a tool to get into the clear biology, working closely with a physician.
And the very definition of a physician is expanding right now.
It really is.
Yeah.
The sources detail a new AI doctor called Superpower. This system can analyze over 100 biomarkers every single year to detect early signs of over 1,000 conditions.
It's essentially a medical assistant designed to catch anomalies before you ever even feel a symptom.
Exactly. And Aura Health is pushing this boundary too. They're launching a new AI feature specifically for tracking women's health, analyzing data from the entire cycle all the way through to the pause.
We are gathering the data required to treat the individual at a microscopic level rather than relying on just the statistical average of a population. We're making the invisible workings of the body visible.
And here is a tangible consequence of all these health interventions that I just found fascinating. Because these new medications are successfully down-regulating hunger orchestrators for millions of people. Global sugar prices have actually hit a 5-year historical low.
Wow.
The demand for sugar is measurably dropping.
That perfectly illustrates how interconnected our internal biology is with macroeconomic systems. When you alter the internal chemistry of enough individuals, you literally shift global commodity markets.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
But let's push past biology and get down to the fundamental building blocks of reality. The sources feature an exploration of quantum science.
Oh, this part is wild.
It is. And the person investigating this used the Richard Feynman method via Claude to break it down. For those who haven't used it, the Feynman method involves asking an AI to explain a highly complex topic as if it were teaching a beginner.
It forces the AI to strip away the jargon and use clear analogies.
Right. And what they uncovered is just mind-bending. Stuart Hameroff highlighted a published paper from Anirban's team regarding, and I'm not making this up, brain jelly.
Brain jelly is the colloquial term, but the science behind it is a massive leap. They have engineered a quantum biological condensate that operates at ambient temperature.
The sources describe it as being made of helical organic nanowires that fold into dodecahedral qubits. Let's translate that.
Please do.
So instead of traditional computing bits that are either a 0 or a 1 qubits can exist in multiple states at once. But normally they require near absolute zero temperatures in massive silicon rigs.
Right, huge cooling systems.
Yes. But this team is using dodecahedral structures. Think of a microscopic 12-sided die made from organic material to act as multi-state switches at room temperature. We are building quantum computers out of the same biological stuff we're made of.
Which brings us to a conceptual breakthrough in the sources that completely synthesizes the two halves of our deep dive today.
Yeah.
Thermodynamic computing.
Or lay this out for us. Traditional computing spends an immense amount of energy trying to eliminate noise. It wants perfect silent zeros and ones.
Hmm.
It requires those massive energy-hungry cooling systems to keep the environment perfectly controlled. Thermodynamic computing flips that paradigm entirely.
So.
It does not try to eliminate the thermodynamic noise. It actually harvests the chaos and uses the noise itself to build brain-like networks.
I'll make sure I'm grasping this. Harvesting the noise instead of eliminating it. That sounds remarkably similar to what the writer was doing in the Spotlight piece. That is the exact parallel. Think about traditional approaches to psychological trauma. People expend massive amounts of emotional energy trying to suppress their noise.
Their dark memories, their fears, their shadow.
Exactly. They try to keep that stuff locked in a room from the year 2000, functioning like a traditional computer trying to maintain a perfect cold state.
Right.
But Jungian psychology argues against suppression. It tells you to walk into the room, hold the hand of your younger self, and integrate that darkness. You use the noise of your past as fuel to gain power.
Wow.
Thermodynamic computing is taking a literal Jungian approach to engineering. It is a shadow model for technology.
I have to pause there because I want to challenge that slightly. It's a beautiful analogy, but biological human trauma is profoundly different from thermal fluctuations in a silicon or biological computer. Can a machine actually process a shadow?
The machine doesn't have a soul, no, but look at the structural mechanics of it. Both systems are realizing that attempting to isolate and suppress chaos is ultimately inefficient and fragile. By designing a system, whether it's a human psyche or a biological quantum computer, to accept the noise and route it into the processing power, the system becomes exponentially more resilient. You stop fighting the chaos and start using it.
A Jungian shadow model for computing. That is incredible. And speaking of the energy required to run all these systems, the sources suggest we need to do a personal energy audit.
Energy consumption is the ultimate bottleneck for all of this innovation right now. The sources mention recent geothermal updates for 2026 and a memorandum of understanding signed for German stellarators.
A stellarator is a type of fusion reactor that uses incredibly complex, twisted magnetic coils to confine plasma. It is notoriously difficult to build, but it represents our pursuit of limitless clean energy.
But until we master fusion, we have to manage our current grid. Hannah Ritchie's climate analysis points out that our daily transportation, specifically petroleum cars, which emit roughly 3 times more than electric vehicles and gas heating, are massive ongoing drains.
But the sources ask you to consider a different kind of daily consumption, which is your AI prompts.
Yeah, this is a big one.
Every time you ask a large language model to write code, generate an image, or summarize an article, it fires up servers that require massive amounts of water and electricity.
Right.
The question posed to you is whether this query is actually necessary. Can you solve this problem yourself? Can you ask your own body for the answer instead of outsourcing it to a server farm?
It really comes down to intentionality. If the computational energy is spent analyzing data that moves humanity forward, it is a worthy investment. But we have to be conscious of outsourcing basic human cognition and the frivolous drain that puts on the physical world.
We have to wrap up, but I cannot leave without running through the final rapid-fire updates from the sources, because the sheer velocity of change right now is staggering. First, if you look at the sky tonight, there's a total lunar eclipse and a blood moon happening.
A nice reminder of the physical universe above us.
Exactly. Down here, a company called VoiceBox just dropped new tech that is reportedly beating 11 labs. It can clone a human voice with highly expressive intonation in mere seconds.
The speed of voice synthesis is completely outpacing our ability to verify audio authenticity.
Then we have medical breakthroughs. Womb transplants are now successfully delivering healthy babies, altering the entire landscape of reproductive possibilities.
Unbelievable.
In neurology, new research indicates that certain mushrooms, specifically the neuroplasticity triggered by psilocybin, are quite literally helping people think lighter by breaking down rigid neural pathways.
We are finding chemical keys to unlock those locked doors in the psyche we discussed earlier.
Exactly. In the AI video space, Grok just launched a feature allowing users to extend generated videos by 10 seconds, which requires the AI to logically predict the physics of a moving scene. And perhaps the most surreal update, PSLF just launched a tool to create a highly realistic, interactive AI version of you, a digital twin.
It is a relentless whirlwind, and it's so easy to feel overwhelmed by the sheer scale of it all. But the sources highlight a quote from Daniel Jeffries' piece Abundance Boom Memo from 2030.
What does he say?
He writes, "The optimists were right. Again, If not an optimist, yet we can choose to become one.
We can choose to become one. That brings us full circle to Carl Jung and the final quote from the Fusion Note's writing today.
Yeah.
I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become.
Yes.
Think about the ground we covered today. From a writer comforting their past self in a locked room, choosing to flip the construct of their memory, to humanity choosing to build collaborative AI models, pursuing room-temperature quantum brain jelly, and mapping the universe with Prometheus. We are actively choosing our future.
And that leaves me with a final thought for you to explore on your own. We just discussed Pika Self creating a digital AI version of you and VoiceBox cloning your voice in seconds.
Right.
If, as the deeply personal writing suggested today, our memory is a house with locked doors full of our shadows, fears, and traumas, what happens when these new AI digital clones inherit our data? Will they only replicate the highly curated figures of light that we project onto our social media profiles? Or, if we want them to truly represent us, will we have to teach our technology how to make the darkness conscious too? If we build AI in our image, do we have a responsibility to teach it how to process a shadow?
If we don't integrate our own shadows first, we might just program our AI clones to act them out for us. That is a heavy but vital question to carry with you this week. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the inner and outer frontiers. Keep leaning in, keep exploring what's behind those locked doors, and we will see you next time.